Welcome back, AP. I said it. That's right. Anyway, now, let's go ahead and start banging this stuff out. I'm going to try my best to focus. I'm sitting here in scenic Mrs. McTammany's room right now, trying not to talk to her, which is like a whole other thing. Like, it's just really difficult to focus, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So we're going to pick up where we left off in class, talking about Edward VI, the Tudor dynasty in England, and kind of like their effects on the religious movements of the Reformation, right? So we left off on Edward VI, right? Big tuberculosis guy, real big fan, ends up dying, okay? So he only ruled for about 6 years, more like 2 if you count the times he was ill. Now, fun facts about him, though, he did almost marry a 7-month-old, which we will talk about her later when we get to Elizabeth here in a few. And don't let me forget to tell you her execution story in class tomorrow. Now, he tried to give the throne to Lady Jane Grey. We talked about that already. She ended up dying in a very tragic way that I physically cannot stomach to talk about because it makes me so sad. Now, also, the Book of Common Prayer. We didn't really get a chance to hammer this home in class, but the Book of Common Prayer became the guiding text for Anglican faith, right? It began to discuss their views on monasticism and why it wasn't necessary. It began to discuss the Eucharist and the practice of transubstantiation and like the fact that they still believed in it, but then like Elizabeth's going to change a couple of things, okay? Because here's the thing, jot this down real quick. Henry VIII set the tone for the Anglican faith because he made himself the head of the church, right? The supreme head of the church. The king at any moment was allowed to change any small details about the Anglican church if he saw fit, okay? So, and then we left off in class talking about, however, the Third Secession Act of 1543, ironically enough, the First Secession Act and the Second Secession Act of the earlier forms of parliamentary practice actually claimed that Mary and Elizabeth were illegitimate heirs to the throne. However, the third one is going to bring them back in because to bring Edward back in and any heirs from Catherine Parr, he had to legally allow Mary and Elizabeth to come in. So, now really quick, when we talked about Lady Jane Grey, she didn't, Edward did not want her to become a successor, or he wanted her to become a successor instead of Mary Tudor, we'll talk about right now, because Mary Tudor remained Catholic. Let's talk a little backstory about her real fast. She is going to pull England back to Catholicism, right? So she is the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first wife. Catherine of Aragon, after being put on house arrest by Henry VIII, is going to remain devoutly Catholic, all right? Devoutly Catholic. So she was raised by her mother, who was devoutly Catholic, okay? So she had a lot of animosity towards the Anglican Church and the Anglican faith. She wanted to remain Catholic because she believed it was the superior faith. She believed that her father was committing atrocities by pulling England away, right? So she had 30 years of her life to sit there and brood over this entire separation. And also, the entire reason why her mother's under house arrest and she's living in Essex instead of actually living in London is because of this Reformation, because he pulled away from Catholicism. Hi, Seamus. All right, so anyway, now, so, really quick though, big thing about Mary, she's going to marry, get it, see what I did there? She's going to marry Prince Philip II, right? At the time, Philip II of Spain was just a prince, right? So, well, he actually wasn't Philip II of Spain yet. He was just Philip of Spain, Prince Philip, right? Now, he's a Habsburg, okay? Jot that down somewhere if you actually have it. He was 27 when she was 37. Now, I don't know if you know anything about life expectancies and things like that in Europe, but when she was 37, she looked a little something like that, and he looked a little something like that, okay? So, obviously, large age gap, right? Now, really quick, she was also very, very, very connected to him. She was obsessed with him, right? She thought he was just so handsome when she saw pictures of him. She was like, oh my God, I will let him be king in a heartbeat, right? So they actually get married to try and bridge the gap between Catholic countries, right? Spain, who was still devoutly Catholic, wanted to marry Philip onto the throne of England so that England would possibly return to Catholicism, which it did under Mary, right? They agreed on a lot of things, like, for example, let's hunt down Protestants who openly, worship, and we'll have them burned at the stake. Well, funny thing about that whole system, she was really, really bad at being Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary was actually referred to as Bloody Mary because of all of the stake burnings and, heresy accusations and actually the deaths caused by her reign. But the thing about it is, she wasn't that good because she only killed like a couple of hundred. And so I know Haley right now is like, oh my God, you're talking about hundreds of people. And I'm like, nah, but still, it's only a couple of hundred. In the grand scheme of how large England was as a country, only burning at the stake a few hundred people is not as dramatic as earning yourself the name Bloody Mary, right? So Now, about 1,000 of these Protestants are going to flee. Put a star next to that fact, because it is extremely important. But the marriage between these two is going to not fall out of favor. But first of all, the Spanish did not accept her. Mary Tudor was considered by many Spanish under accounts from many writers as being, oh man, she's not pretty, and she's English, and like her dad was a Protestant, and her hair's gray. Ew, right? And also it was widely known that Philip had a lot of mistresses. So they tried their best to bear children. Mary actually at one point had a phantom pregnancy that devastated her, like absolutely devastated her in her emotional state, going into her death at age 37, right? She died at the age of 37, had a very short reign of only 3 years. And the thing about it, though, Philip found out about the death of his wife while he was back in Spain, finding out about the death of his father in the same day. That stinks. Like, that's a really rough goings. So Philip II, though, would be crowned. What's the word I'm looking for there? Not coronized. Anyway, we're not going to worry about it right now. But he's going to be crowned King of Spain, right, of Habsburg Spain, following the deposition of, well, not the deposition, but the abdication, that's the word I'm looking for, of the throne by his father. Really quick run-back fact real fast. So during the marriage of Philip and Mary, he was king of Spain for a time, right? Because Charles V, his father, emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, is going to abdicate the throne in Spain and run away to a French monastery where he's going to like fake his own funeral and all that other stuff we talked about, right? So speaking of him, though, when he abdicated, he actually split the family of the Habsburgs into two separate branches. Jot that down somewhere randomly, all right? The Spanish branch, right, which would control Spain, Portugal, and the Netherlands, and then the Austrian branch, which would control most of the Holy Roman Empire, and then Austria as well, right? So then the Habsburgs in Austria would also control the Italian states. So Philip, his empire was significantly smaller than he was expecting it to be, right? But when he found out about the death of his father and the death of his wife on the same day, it led to a whole nother batch of problems, right? Because who's going to get the throne next? That's right, Elizabeth. Good job. I heard y'all over there. Now, anyway, she is going to bring England back to the Anglican Church, right? She's going to drag England back, kicking and screaming back to the Anglican Church. Her biggest incoming problem was dealing with the split of extremes, right? So if you look at the board real quick, right, you had like these people called Puritans all the way over here who are a type of Protestant, okay? And then you had the Catholics over here. The thing about it, if you look at like the severity of the spectrum between these two, the Anglicans are kind of like right there due to the fact that these two groups, the Catholics and the Puritans, absolutely despised each other, right? So remember when I said to put a star next to the 1,000 Protestants that fled under the reign of Mary, right, in those 3 years? Well, a lot of them actually went to this place in Switzerland called Geneva, where they met this guy named John Calvin, which we'll talk about here in a second, right? So, and when they met John Calvin there, they thought, oh man, your Protestant faith is amazing, right? We're Calvinists now. We want to purify the Anglican Church of all of its Catholic elements because we don't like Catholics, right? Because they're such terrible people. They're back home burning us at the stake, right? So the Puritans came back when Mary died, right? And so they were accusing the English government of supporting a Catholic ideology, right? So those are the Puritans, right? They would eventually be called separatists, and actually underneath people like James I, they're going to be persecuted a lot too. They're going to have their ears cut off and stuff like that as a symbol of their as a symbol of the heresy towards the Anglican Church, stuff like that. Now, anyway, but really quick though, Elizabeth's going to take the middle of the road approach, being the Anglican queen that she was, right? The middle of the road approach due to the fact that she said, I'm going to allow Catholics to practice this at home, right? They're going to have home practice, but they're not allowed to do it in public. I'm not giving the monasteries back. She said, monks are weird. I want to keep that land for, enclosures, right? I want to be able to make as much money off as possible. She said clergy also were allowed to get married. This was a big, big, big transition for her because she wanted to make it just a little bit less Catholic, right? So she also, though, is going to keep the infrastructure of the bishops and the archbishops of the Catholic Church, right? Not the Catholic bishops and the archbishops themselves, but she's going to keep that structure, that hierarchical structure of the church inside the Anglican faith. So also, she's going to have the masses done in English. So if you can tell, she kind of set up that diet Catholic perspective of the Anglican Church. She also came up with the idea that transubstantiation is a thing, but they don't know how it works. It's a mystery, right? She was like, it's a mystery of what if it turns into anything at all, right? So here's the thing, though. When I talk about the Catholics as well, big problem happened with this lady named Mary, Queen of Scots, right? So Mary, Queen of Scots was a really, really big problem for her because she actually tried to lead a small insurrection against Elizabeth, right? When Elizabeth became the queen, the Catholic community that actually had grown under the reign of Mary tries to rebel and overthrow Elizabeth, right? Well, she crushes that thing and then has Mary put to death, right? Has her put to death. All the while that happened, Philip II, the old Catholic husband of her older sister, told Elizabeth, yo, hey, let's get married, right? I've already married one Tudor sister. How about the other? And she says, no, thank you. I'm going to remain the virgin queen forever. And she refuses. And after Mary, Queen of Scots is brutally executed in England as a showing of Protestant violence towards the Catholics, the Pope commands Philip to strike back, all right? Not to mention the fact, the reason why I have the Dutch in there is due to the fact that the English were helping the Dutch rebel against Philip and the Habsburg, reign in the Netherlands. Whew. Sorry, that's a lot of stuff, right? But make sure you kind of rewind it, listen to that again, all right? But that's her biggest problem because that all led to this huge event. Philip II versus Elizabeth, round one, the Spanish Armada, right? More like round one KO because she absolutely wrecks him. Now, anyway, so Spanish Armada, right? Philip's going to take a massive gamble in this entire situation. So 130 Spanish vessels known as the Armada, the Holy Armada, the Holy Fleet, right, would actually be destroyed in the English Channel primarily by lighter, faster, and more heavily armed English ships. Only half the Spanish boats are actually going to make it back. Now, a lot of it has to do with the pirate tactics as well of Sir Walter Raleigh and Sir Francis Drake. That's why actually Elizabeth, who was so in love with the both of them, called them privateers because they were private consultants to the British Navy, even though they were well known for piracy in a lot of other countries, right? So Philip II is going to take a major gamble on this, right? So the Spanish boats were heavier, not as mobile, didn't carry as much heavily armored, because the Spanish galleon is actually meant to be transporting goods back and forth across the Atlantic from the new colonies over in the New World, right? When we get to exploration, we'll rewind it all the way back. But the galleons and the vessels that the Spanish were using were meant to carry more cargo and not as much heavy armor because who were they going to shoot cannons at in the New World? The Native Americans? That's messed up. So that was a big gamble he took. And the reasons why the English were victorious in the Armada is due to the fact of fire ships. I know some of you are like, yeah, fire ships. I know Grace Martirana is super hyped about the idea of setting a boat on fire and launching it at somebody else because it's a piece of junk, and actually setting the opposite boat on fire due to the fact that most of the boats were actually covered in this stuff called pitch to actually make them waterproof it, but it was very, very flammable. But the thing about it is the real reason why they actually lost has to do with the armament, the fact that the English had more guns on their boats. Second of all, because of storms on the backside of Ireland, right? So when the Spanish actually went around through the channel and got most of their fleet destroyed, they then tried to go all the way around England and then try to come in through Ireland. Why? Because they remained devoutly what? Good job, Anthony O'Toole. I heard you over there. Devoutly Catholic, right? So they remained devoutly Catholic after being taken over by Henry VIII. And so they actually planned, we'll land in Ireland and we'll amass an army of loyal Catholic Irish, right? And then we'll storm Britain through that direction. Well, ironically enough, that's not the storm that ended up happening. A huge thing of squalls and thunderstorms and sea storms actually destroyed a large part of the Spanish fleet. Now, also, they didn't have enough food. They actually tried to carry a lot of food and water with them, but the water actually went rank and this food went bad. So, some of their, they had to return home because some of their sailors were going to starve. So anyway, really quick, we got to wrap it up with John Calvin. All right, so now we got the rise of Calvinism in France. All right, so anyway, so this right here is John Calvin, looking like a really, really nice grandpa, right? But he's not, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now, John Calvin was going to be born in 1509, and he was going to live until 1564, right? Now, Luther was already, to give you a perspective of the timeline here, Luther was already active when John Calvin was just born, right? So to give you a heads up, though, what's going to end up happening is John Calvin's going to learn a lot from the Protestant Reformation under Luther, right? So he's going to move after converting, all right? He was born a Catholic, but he's going to move after converting from France to Switzerland, right? In a place called Geneva. Yeah, Geneva's in Switzerland, isn't it? Miss McTavish? Yeah, that's what I thought. Double checking. She's smart. She knows geography. Now, to create the ultimate Christian community, right? So John Calvin, his faith is based on something completely different and separate. So if you were to look again at the spectrum, Puritans are a type of Calvinist. Huguenots are a type of Calvinist. Whereas like Anglicans and Lutherans, if you look at like super liberal or super conservative over to the right, Calvinists are about as far right as you get. All right? So wanted to create the ultimate Christian community. And he writes down all of his ideas about Calvinism in this thing called the Institutes of Christian Religion, right? So in that book, he talks about the beliefs of Calvinists. You got a class coming in right now? Crap. All right, anyway, he talks about the belief of Calvinists. This is going to be bad. There's just going to be a bunch of children randomly in this flip for no apparent reason. But it's okay. So I've got to run through the hallway real quick, and then I'm going to try and just like stay flanked up against the lockers. So anyway, excuse me. Anyway, I'm like actively flipping right now. So no, stop. But anyway, so all right. Anyway, now I have to come back in here and finish it. If you want to, there you go. You want to wave at it real quick? Annie Hatch. Annie Hatch. Yeah, there you go. See, there you go. There you go. Now get out. All right, anyway, now, so. No, I won't, I promise. All right, anyway. That is only the second time in flip history that anybody has ever actually infiltrated a flip. Anyway, but now we got to finish up talking about a couple other things. I won't be able to focus if you're in here. All right, so anyway. Now, the Institutes of Christian Religion lay down the beliefs of the Calvinists, right? So they believe in chiefly the absolute omnipotence of God, the all-powerfulness of God, right? So they also believe in the weakness of humanity. So according to the Calvinists, they believe that God knows your beginning, your end, your past, your present, your everything, right? So that's going to work in this idea of predestination. Now, really quick, predestination, pessimist or positive? We'll talk about that when we do the warm-up, all right? But I want you to take a stance on that. But let's talk really quickly, too, about what's not allowed, according to Calvinists. They don't believe in drinking, singing loudly in public, theaters, bars, public forms of like restaurants. They don't believe in alcohol. They don't believe in so many things that they believe violates image of God, right? So he's going to do this in the ultimate fashion by trying to create that Christian community in this thing called the Genevan Consistory, right? So in the Genevan Consistory, what he does is he creates a council of laymen and priests of the Calvinist faith where they basically inspect everyone's lives, right? And if they catch you being like a drunk, or if they catch you like lashing out or being a heretic, they actually are going to turn you over to the civil authorities where you will be tortured almost to death, but then publicly executed in front of everyone. This is what I'm talking about. Calvinists are so extreme, crazy extreme, right? So Genevan Consistory also, though, took in refugee Protestants from other areas. That's how the Puritans got there, right? So the Puritans ended up being refugees there, and they actually, like that's where they adopted a lot of their beliefs, right? So the Institutes of Christian Religion is a very important thing to start, all right? So anyway, now I can't forget. Don't forget John Knox. John Knox is one of those refugees, and he actually is going to establish the Presbyterian Church in Scotland. Jot that down real quick. Now let's make a list really fast on the board of kind of the shakeup of everything going down, right? So we got our we got Catholic, we got Calvinist, and then we have our what? Oh, wow, I got to change the color of this marker. That is obscene. All right, so we got Catholic, we got Calvinist, we got, hold on, get up my door. We have Catholic, we have Calvinist, Calvinist. Hold on, I'm flipping. Hold on, don't distract me. All right, now, so Calvinist, we also have Lutherans, right? Now, what we're going to do real quick is we're going to talk about, like, which, I'm flipping. You got to shut the door real quick, please. All right, anyway, now, Catholic, our big Catholic countries that still remain in Europe are, of course, Italy, Spain, France, we're going to say about 80% anyway, okay? Those are our big remaining Catholic countries, right? And then we have our Calvinist countries, who is about 10% of England and about 20, you want to stick your head in there, George? All right, anyway, now, percent of France, okay? Why is Monica like never like able to
he's
take
on
on
a trip today. With the bishop.
Your Lutheran countries, on the other hand, or your other Protestants, right, is Germany. And then also, who else we got? And then Switzerland, right? Now, keep this list running. And then we're going to talk about it a little bit more tomorrow, all right? But I'm going to go ahead and get out of your way so you can see that. Very, very good stuff. But that's it for today. I know that one's a little bit longer, but also there's a bunch of goofy stuff that happened in it anyway. All right, so I'll talk to you guys later on. Y'all have a good evening.